Welcome to the Angels Positivity and Love Show. Incredible guests the world over with amazing insights, amazing journeys, and a lot of wisdom to share with all of us. Oftentimes, they're healers, all different modalities, all sorts of backgrounds, culturally, and more. But we also have international best-selling authors, scientists, doctors, a White House physician to the US president, the youngest Delta Force operator to ever join Delta Force, studied naturopathy. That's how he's here on the show. And just many other fantastic individuals. A shout out to Ian Stenlake. If anybody knows their Australian actors or musicals down under, he's been on the show. Check out his episode, a lot of fun. Today, coming to us is a very special person, acclaimed author, and much more. I'm going to actually, for the first time in 200 tapings, read an intro that I wrote, and I love it, and I love her. She does incredible work for all of us. Today, we dive into the power of the mind, or some might say the heart and universe, with an acclaimed author and pioneering researcher in the field of intention, exploring how words and thoughts can impact the physical world. Lynne McTaggart from the UK, multiple books, including The Intention 2008, The Intention Experiment 2008, The Power of Eight in 2018. Plus, she's well known for one of the biggest books, I think, in the whole realm of spirituality, research, consciousness, and more, The Field from 2003. Her publishers have ranged from Simon & Schuster, HarperCollins, Hay House. Lynne, good to see you again. Welcome on the show.
Nice to see you too.
First question for you, big picture. You've been doing this a long time. You've been helping people kind of clear the clutter and set their intent. And there's a lot you're going to share with us in just a second. But what have you come to appreciate along the way about mankind, about yourself, and about just how much more potential there is for all of us with your work?
Well, I think it hijacked me, to be honest. I mean, I started out life as an investigative reporter. I was busting baby selling rings with hidden tape recorders when I first started my work. And that's what I thought I was going to do. I was going to put bad guys in jail. And I've never been somebody who has just followed the status quo. I've always been, I suppose, a bit of a disruptor. But I didn't expect my whole view of the world to be disrupted. And it had started down that path when we started what was then a newsletter called What Doctors Don't Tell You, which was all about what doesn't work in conventional medicine and better alternatives. And so as we started investigating medicine, my husband and I, another kind of investigative reporting, we kept coming across very good studies of things like spiritual healing. And I kept thinking to myself, if you can have a thought and send it to someone else, that by itself undermines everything we think about how the world works. But I didn't expect what ended up happening when I started researching the field, which was the discovery of a new science in the making. And that new science completely changed me, because I suddenly recognized that, and with my work with intention following that, because I felt there was some unfinished business when I finished the field, there were implications that thoughts are things that affect other things. So I wanted to find out how far we can take this. How far do we go down the rabbit hole? And I set up a thing called the intention experiment to test it. And I'll get into more of that later. But the point of it was that I suddenly recognized, viscerally, tested and proved how powerful we really are, how our thoughts not only are things that can affect other things, but things that can heal ourselves, each other, even the world.
When it comes to the interconnectedness of all, which is a pretty big concept, some cultural groups, religions, or philosophies and so on really believe in it. Where have you been in your personal journey for that interconnectedness of all? Is it something you're embracing more each day as you go on this journey?
Yeah, because I'm seeing it with the people I teach. I'm seeing a sense of oneness. I'm feeling a sense of oneness. I'm listening to people talk about a sense of oneness, because, we talk about being all one. We in this space talk about, yeah, we're all one, but we don't really experience life like that, nor do we live life like that. We live life in competitive isolation. That's what we've been taught. That's the paradigm. That's the paradigm by which we live. We are, we are sad and lonely people on a lonely planet in a lonely universe. But during group intention, as I've discovered, as I've demonstrated in scientific experiments, we've even done brainwave experiments. We've done 42 intention experiments to date, and we haven't got the results yet of the 42nd one. We just ran that about 10 days ago. But of the 41 thus far that we've got results back from, 37 have shown measurable, positive, mostly significant effects. And there is no drug out there to compare it with something else that has that kind of consistent track record. So thoughts are very powerful, but the whole oneness piece came about when I had a team of neuroscientists study people in my smaller groups called Power of Eight groups. And we found that very quickly, people who were in a group like that, sending intention to someone else, we put an EEG cap on one member of the group who was sending intention to someone else in each of the 7 groups. And we found very consistent results, big brainwave changes, turning off the parts of the brain that make us feel separate. The parietal lobes, which sit right back here, they help us navigate through space. They tell us this is me, this is not me. They were dialed down. And so were the other parts of the brain that make us feel separate. Also, the right frontal lobes that are involved with worry, doubt, negativity were dialed way down. So these were people whose brainwave states looked nothing like those of meditation. They looked almost identical to Buddhist monks and during ecstatic prayer and Sufi masters during chanting, as measured by Dr. Andrew Newberg, a noted neuroscientist then at the University of Pennsylvania. So our people were in a state of ecstatic oneness, but here is the interesting piece of it. Those student volunteers, they were from Life University, one of the biggest chiropractic universities in the world. Student volunteers, most of whom had never even meditated before. So they were complete novices, and yet they were able to get into an advanced brain state in a minute or two. And so that, to me, was really interesting. The idea that we can access a sense of oneness, a mystical experience of transformation and connection in a minute or two without years of practice or hours of priming. These are people who got into it in a minute with no prior experience. And so I understood suddenly that we can access oneness. That is our natural state. And when that happens, healing happens, changes happen. Now, I mentioned to you, I just ran a giant intention experiment, a peace intention experiment on February 1st. And I ran it with Gaia at the Gaia Sphere in outside of Boulder, Colorado. But we had it live streamed to tens of thousands of people around the world. And people were reporting, as they always do, mystical brain states. I felt like I was in a higher network. And these are people reporting in who are saying this while sitting in front of their computer screen by themselves. And yet they connected into what was essentially a psychic internet, people crying uncontrollably, talking about goosebumps up and down their arms, and healings. We had a guy who had panic attacks in our audience at the Gaia Sphere, he had regular panic attacks, and he had had one right in the audience. And as soon as he started the Power of Eight intention experiment, and afterward, he said the panic attacks were gone. We had 2 people one person had a dislocated shoulder, could move it all the way up by the end. Somebody else had terrible frozen shoulder, could move it all the way up by the end too. And this is, again, in 10 minutes. That's all we ever do. So we'll find out the results of the intention experiment. The target was Washington, D.C., not only the three most violent parts of Washington, which are up to 600 times more violent than the rest of the U.S., but also right across the road, right across a narrow river, the Anacostia River, from these three areas, Brentwood, Deanwood, and Anacostia, lays the American capital. And so there's a good argument that very violent places, 1 in 3 residents in one of those places can expect to be the victim of a violent crime. There's an argument to say that violence is contagious. You know, when an area starts getting run down and windows being smashed, it's well known that smashing of windows starts multiplying. And so we can also consider that violence just across the river can beget violence in the Congress too. And by that, I mean lack of respect, polarization, not working together, being difficult, all of the kinds of things we've seen and been upset about in our Congress to date.
If we talk about individual human beings, where are you on the curve for believing that humans are limitless? Or how has your journey kind of transpired along the way? Are you now believing humans have no limits at all, or are we still held back pretty much?
I'm not sure that we can fly to the moon by ourselves without a spacecraft, but I think we are pretty limitless in our extended human potential. I've seen loads of people get up out of wheelchairs, throw away their crutches after one 10-minute intention experiment. If people have a look at my Gaia documentary, Gaia did a documentary about me called The Power of Intention. It's right on YouTube. They will see 4 of my students, and one of them was going blind. Doctors could do nothing for her. She had retinal damage in both eyes, and she was having real trouble seeing. She couldn't drive anymore. She couldn't see things clearly at all anymore, and it was getting worse and worse. She was in a master class of mine, a Power of 8 Intention master class, and her group, I put people into groups of 8 or so and have them do intention for each other virtually once a week for a year. And she had one intention from her group, felt great energy around her eyes and in her body. And essentially, her eyes immediately got better and got better and better and better. And she now has 20/20 vision. You'll see somebody else born with liver damage, the absence of a really important liver enzyme, which was causing scarring, liver failure, spleen enlargement. And the doctor said the only way out of this is a liver transplant. And her liver was deteriorating. It looked like she was going to have to get one soon. One Power of 8 intention, 10 minutes once again, and her liver completely healed. She has a letter from 2 liver specialists basically saying your liver is normal after a number of scans. So I've seen this multiple times. I've seen people heal other parts of their lives. One of my favorites is we're just finishing one master class and about to start a new one on February 22nd. And there was a woman in there and I think I believe she lives in Switzerland. We have people all over the world who take part in these classes. And she needed 40,000 euros for her business. And her business, she wasn't getting as much business. But after her intention with her group, 20,000 euros amazingly appeared on the bank balance, even though she knew they had less, their business, they'd had fewer purchases, fewer business, less business. And then she got the other 20,000 was an unexpected tax rebate. Out of nowhere, she gets the 40K that she needs. And that happened with somebody else in her group who needed 40,000 euros for his child who had a handicap. and he didn't know how he was going to get it. They were doing intentions for it. Lo and behold, without him applying for this, the office that has to do with children who have a handicap contacted them and sent them 40,000 euros unrequested. So these are the kinds of miracles I see all the time. And I've come to believe that it's very true what quantum physics says. We are co-creators. The world out there is a batch of unset jello, and we and our consciousness is what gets the jello to set. So we have power over our lives. We have power over our health. We have power over the health of other people. And we can heal not just physical things, but also pains in the heart, relationships. I've seen estranged relationships get completely healed. And I've seen people create new relationships, not just when they get intentions for themselves. One of the most amazing things for me with the intention experiment is how many people get healed. In the one we just ran, we're not only measuring Washington, D.C. to see if violence went down in those neighborhoods I told you were violent, but we're also measuring what happened to the participants. We've taken measurements before and after the experiment on people using GDV readings, which measure light emissions very, very accurately and can show subtle differences in immune system markers, in endocrine systems, all kinds of things. So we're looking at that before and afterward. We measured a batch of people in the audience. We're measuring changes in emotion too. And of course, as always, I survey participants who take parts in these experiments to see if anything changed in their lives. And typically, I hear from people saying, I'm suddenly, my partner and I who've been estranged are suddenly back together again, or I'm talking to my son after an absence of 20 years, or my father said he was sorry for disowning me. This kind of stuff happens, plus healings. About 35 to 40% of the people who send back these surveys say some physical ailment or condition is improved or downright healed. We had a woman in the last one before this who had type 1 diabetes, and her blood sugar was out of control, and suddenly it was under control. It was regulated after doing the intention. So there is something about participating in a group in an altruistic endeavor, which is what we're doing, and collecting together our consciousnesses, coming together or tapping into the universal consciousness, I should say. But something about coming together with a common intention is a fast track to the miraculous in every sense.
Beautiful. Intention sets reality. Can we go back to the bigger picture? You touched on it, but is it a global slipstream of consciousness going on that we're all participating in, whether we know it or not? Is it one of the cultures or religions or philosophies out there that says it really well? Do you have a Sufi master that you feel like has encapsulated it, a long time ago? And a couple of other offshoots of this question. Have you personally gotten answers or experienced stuff that you just don't feel has been borne out by the science, so you really don't want to say it out loud? And I'll give you Gary Zukav's quote from Seed of the Soul that I just love this quote. I try to say it on the show as much as possible. You change the way that you shape the light, which is flowing through you by changing your consciousness. Can you play with all that and share with us what you will?
Okay, what a great quote. I love Gary Zukav. He is a sweet man, and I know him personally. And I love that idea that it's just flowing through you, because it truly is just flowing through you. And we all see it. We all feel it. We all experience it in so many different ways when we do a Power of 8 group. So that's just a group of 8 or so. It doesn't have to be exactly 8. Or we feel it when we're doing an intention experiment with tens of thousands of people around the globe. And size doesn't matter. A lot of people think, oh, you got to have more for a bigger effect. That's not been my experience. When we've done intention experiments and repeated them with different size audiences, from 100 to many thousands, we get the same result. It's about group consciousness of any size, and that's what's so powerful. But we all feel a kind of universal energy that is we are part of, but not originating. And that is the real key piece of this, I think. It's not all locked inside our heads, that's for sure. Our brains are not the originators of consciousness. Consciousness flows through us, as you said. Consciousness is picked up by our brains like an antenna receiver. We are picking up and we are beaming out, but it's beaming through us. And consciousness doesn't die. It's very, very clear it doesn't die. I've talked to numerous scientists, certainly Dr. Konstantin Korotkov, the famous Russian physicist, used his light instruments, his gas discharge visualization instrumentation, which measures light coming out of living things. And he found the light was still carrying on with newly dead cadavers. Something was happening that was transitioning. Consciousness was not dying. EEG measurements, mistakenly put and measured from people who had died, there was one case not long ago, showed the brain was still picking up something for days after the person had died, indicating perhaps a transition. And then there is all the many, many, many cases, not only reported by the individuals themselves, like Anita Moorjani, of near-death experiences, but also of scientists and doctors like Pim van Lommel, the Dutch cardiologist, who started collecting many stories of his patients who had had heart attacks and were dead for a little while. And all were coming back with very similar concepts of being outside their body, having the similar kind of the tunnel, the reckoning, all of the things we know about. But most interestingly, being at a different vantage point from their body. So being able to see on the top of the roof, being able to see and know what was going on when their heart had stopped beating. You know, if we were a computer, this was a case of a computer being unplugged. And yet the person was fully conscious of everything that had gone on after he had died or she died. So all of these things convince me, that and afterlife experiments of Dr. Gary Schwartz, who has tuned into and had highly, highly accurate cases of mediums, well controlled, who were able to access information from the dead they could not have known about in any other fashion. And all of this makes us recognize that, you know, we are not just lumps of meat and electrical signaling. We're something far grander, and we access something far, far grander too.
This show has had a lot of various personalities on that I think you've already met or at least know of. Dr. Yvonne Caisson out of Canada with 5 near-death experiences. The person who co-founded Spiritual Awakenings International with her, Robert Baer, had 2 different types of near-death experiences kind of on the same time frame. But Michelle Clare, who had 3, Ingrid Hankala, PhD, who worked for NASA, oceanographer, she had 3. We have a lot of folks, and Dr. Eben Alexander and so on, many others. We've had a lot of folks who have had experiences where they're actually meeting loving beings. It could be a family member, it could be an angel, it could be this figure, that figure from India. Where are you for allowing for beings of light? We'll just sum it all up that way, or folks from our realm who are reconciled. Where are you on that? Is that a later stage that you might be looking into that 10 years from now? How do you handle those topics?
Well, I haven't looked into it in the sense of deeply researched, but I'm very clear that there are beings of light. People in my Power of 8 group see them all the time. There are people who are empathic. And when they're doing Power of Eight groups and we're in a connection like that, we'll oftentimes talk about beings of light behind them and that they are the magnifiers and they're helping. And so I am open to all of this. The new science is as weird as you can get. Quantum physics is as weird as you can get. The idea that things are not an actual something unless consciousness interacts with it, and then it becomes something. The idea that of non-locality, that even if something has just been in contact and you move one to the moon and the other to San Francisco, they still recognize, acknowledge, and are affected by each other. That's as weird as you can get. And so I'm open to all of this. And of course, all of the information that's coming to the fore about UFOs, now called something different, and aliens, now called something different too. We cannot be so have so much hubris that we know everything. It's the same thing as evolution. Evolution is a very limited model. It might be, as there's a paleontologist called Simon Conway Morris, and I like his take on it because he's not either one of the two poles of very blinkered thinking. So that you have on one side, you've got, of course, the Richard Dawkins is the evolution and there's nothing else, and then an atheist, and then you've got on the other side people who are highly religious but have refused to acknowledge anything about evolution and came up with a non-religious idea called intelligent design. But some of that can be very, very blinkered thinking too, and not open to the vast expanse of what's going on here. And in my new book, I'm writing a new book, and it's a big other sweep like the field, but with another kind of energy. And it's very, very clear that there is a big, big picture here that is unified, that is beyond our pathetic and very blinkered view of biology right now. And I think biology has to grow up just the way physics is growing up. And that's the problem with biology. You are just stuck with great materialism and believes that, there's only us, we're the smartest things on the planet, and there's no other life out there. And, that idea has to really change. We have to open ourselves up for much greater realities.
And you must be psychic, because that was literally the next question was, what are your thoughts on UAP, UFO disclosure, and so on? You've interacted with a lot of amazing folks over time, whether running into them at conferences or more. Hal Pultoff, I believe, might be one of them that you've met. Can you mention some of the other figures? And can you just, since disclosure, if it's here, if it's about to happen, it looks like, it's like watching for earthquakes in Santorini right now. We don't know when an eruption's actually going to happen, but it could be with the moon on the 14th, on the 12th. Who knows? Same thing with disclosure. It could be a week away. What would you just like to add for we're not the only casino on the Vegas Strip?
Okay. Well, my company ran a UFO conference many years ago in the early 2000s. And we had Hal Puthoff here. We had Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, the late astronaut. We had people from NASA and British Aerospace, all of whom were saying there's no doubt UFOs exist. There were images that were shown. There were people like Edgar Mitchell was saying, well, it was very, very common knowledge among all of us astronauts that we were seeing them all the time. So, it's really clear it's here. I just attended, I was part of a conference at the Transformational Leadership Council. I'm a member. And Scott Carlin came to speak. He is a well-known producer of all kinds of of very, very well-known movies. But he also is a ufologist, and he presented us with a lot of the latest information about the fact that we're not alone, and about the fact that there are going to be incidents and we are going to have much more connection with them. I think they're thinking, whoa, we really need to help those pathetic people there on Earth. They're blowing themselves up in every way. So I wouldn't be surprised, and I fully expect that to happen.
Uh, for the audience, it's a great time to maybe comment, share this, subscribe, like, hit that bell, and so on. It's free to subscribe. Again, we're booked out to August 19th of 2026, 333 episodes. We switched to 2 shows a week in 2025. An emoji counts, and it really helps other people see the show. But what has resonated that Lynne's been talking about here? And what else would you want to add? Any insights if you had a personal experience and so on? I'd also like to just reference a show that we taped recently. I think it was January, APL Spotlight Series. Britt Elder, CEO of Shirley MacLaine, just put out a 40-year anniversary of Pleiadian experience in Switzerland. I think she's pretty well known, investigative journalist, author, filmmaker, but she got to see ships looking out her window during the show. Through the power of intention, if you want, but that's not scientific, and it was just during the show. But check that out if you're interested. We've had a lot of other UFO, UAP types on the show. What else would you like to cover for a topic that you felt you haven't been asked? Is the consciousness studies arena, which is really big around the globe. There's different institutes dedicated to it. Where do you view them? Are they as much a block as they are making progress? And are there different sectors of science that you've gotten pushback from over time? Are you welcomed wholeheartedly with what you're doing? What's your personal emotional feeling about all this?
Okay. And by the way, I must tell you, my husband, Brian Hubbard, saw a spaceship. I mean, this is many years ago, and there were several days of it. Went back the next day. This is in the UK. This was, he lived at the time in Hitchin in Hertfordshire. And there was a giant craft. He saw it. He was very close up. And it looked very much like Close Encounters type of spaceship. And the next day there were burn marks exactly where he saw it, and very, very clear, and saw some other craft flying as well. So there are many, many people we've spoken to who have had that experience. On the consciousness researchers, it depends on whom. Have I been welcomed with open arms? No. And it depends on where people are in the spectrum of belief and orientation to this material. Remember, I've been writing for and editing a magazine called What Doctors Don't Tell You for 35 years. And so, of course, the conventional medical establishment doesn't love that publication. It's full of research. It's full of hard-nosed evidence. I mean, my husband and I, co-editors, are both investigative reporters by background, in the days when investigative reporters actually knew what they were doing and covered things well and thoroughly. So they don't like what we're doing, of course. And we've been, there have been some groups trying to shut us down over the years and not succeeding because, again, we know how to deal with that. For the work that I do in consciousness research, all about the field and the intention, etc., it falls into 2 camps. Some people who look at a book like The Field, which has 400 scientific references, as well as attempting to be a very readable book for the lay people, but it has 400 scientific references in the back. And we'll say things like, well, this book is nothing more than Star Wars. Well, that is a scientific flat earther. And science is one of the most reductive of the disciplines because it is very, very much about reaffirming the existing paradigm. So it's not just me, but people who explore in new areas. The true scientists oftentimes get vilified, get canceled, or worse. you mentioned Hal Puthoff. I wrote about him in the field. He was one of the heroes. I wrote about Jacques Benveniste, famous biologist who discovered that water has a memory, and also discovered that cells are communicating and molecules are communicating electromagnetically. Again, attacked, vilified by Nature magazine, etc., lost his position, ended up working in a porta cabin to carry on that amazing research he discovered. He knew what he had. He knew what he had and what he discovered. People like Carl Pribram, who was not canceled, but who discovered that memory doesn't exist inside the brain. It's out there in the field. And many, many more like this. I think what I value, and I'm seeing this now with my new book, people who are outside, they may be in the mainstream, but they've discovered a round peg that doesn't fit into the square hole of established science. But they have the courage to carry on like a true explorer to find out what this all means. Those are the scientists I believe are real scientists, and they're the people that I want to follow and I want to write about, because while I always look for rigor in science, and most of these people working in this area, as Rupert Sheldrake, the famous science biologist, discovered, these people working in consciousness research are far more rigorous. These people working in consciousness research are far more rigorous than a lot of scientists in medicine and other areas. They're sloppy and they will bend the evidence oftentimes to fit the status quo, keep their jobs, and so forth. But there are a good band of scientists who will carry on with something, even if it doesn't fit that paradigm, and understand that is true scientific exploration. And those are the people I admire. Those are the people I want to follow. Those are the people I want to write about.
And Rupert Sheldrake was a name I was trying to come up with earlier in the conversation. I know he had contacted our household like 2012, 13, or 14, but no steps or anything like that. So I think twice in the last 10 years I've reached out. It's a very big area that we're talking about here. I have a quote that's going to be a little late to the party that I love this quote from a NASA astronaut. And I just want to get your reaction to it. If you could give yourself a compliment in the context of this quote, I think it's spot on to everything you just said. It's Story Musgrave, NASA astronaut, saying, getting out of the comfortable path. That's what exploration is all about. Could you pat yourself on the back with just a couple of compliments for hanging in there? You've cut a lot of flack. You've done a lot of good. You've spoken around the world in a lot of different like conferences and other settings. You've put the books out. You're doing incredible experiments. But let's take a moment and appreciate just you. What would you say out loud about yourself if you had to just put your hands on your hips and let it fly?
Okay. Well, I guess in my heart, I am a disruptor. I like to break down the old systems that no longer fit and create new ones. And I also am a writer in my heart. Yes, I speak around the world, but when I think of myself, number one, as a writer. And I love to take these complex ideas and create a story about them. I like to take these complex ideas and weave a story out of them and give that story to the world so that they can understand that we have a new story and that we need to live this new story. So I hope that's my contribution, is to help people be forward-looking and also hopeful. One of the things that I try to do in all of my work, whether it's What Doctors Don't Tell You or all of the work in the mind, body, spirit space, is to provide people with hope. Because right now, people are lacking a lot of hope. They think everything is falling to pieces and there's nothing to replace it. And I hope I'm here to say something better is coming along, and we just have to recreate our world, recreate our science, recreate our story of ourselves. And I hope that's what I'm doing.
And as we wrap up here, can we also turn you into a little bit of a guru? You've had a lot of experience witnessing, groups of 8 do setting their intention in many other settings as well. You've just witnessed a lot. You've got a lot of earned experience, wisdom. What would be a mantra or two, if you wish, but a mantra words from your heart that are set up for the audience? If they repeat it with you, and if you could say it 4 times, you're going to leave us with a mantra. If they say it with you 4 times, they come back and play this over again. They write it down and they go for a walk and they repeat it. They repeat it to their dog or as they're brushing their teeth, not because they're brushing their teeth, but you get the idea. Before bed, they say it 4 times. What would those words be that you think make for a great mantra? And now you're an Indian guru, of course. But Lynn, what do you have for us?
Okay. I have the power
Mm.
to heal myself, to heal each other. No, I'll say this again. I have the power to heal myself, to heal my loved ones, and to heal the world.
And can you say that a couple more times for us, just so that you're reinforcing it? There's something to it. You know it. I know it, but the audience needs to hear it from you like 3 more times, if that's okay.
Okay. I'm going to say an alternate one too. I have the power to heal myself in every sense, to heal my loved ones, and to heal the world. I have the power in every sense. I have the power to heal myself in every sense, to heal my loved ones, and to heal the world. I have the power to heal myself in every sense, to heal my loved ones, and to heal the world. I have the power to heal myself in every sense, to heal my loved ones, and to heal the world.
Lynne McTaggart, you're amazing. Thank you for being a guest on the Angels Positivity and Love show.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here with you.